For decades, feminist scholars have explored the monster woman, the witch, the vampire, the grotesque mutated body, the woman who bleeds, curses, contaminates, or kills. But there's one monster who rarely appears in this conversation, the doppelganger. So who's the feminine doppelganger in contemporary horror, and how does she matter now? I argue that today's horror films increasingly construct the feminine doppelganger as a hyper-visible, hyper-performing digital subject. It is a perfected version of the self that is shaped by the demands of platform culture, and her horror emerges from the gap between a perfected algorithm-ready image and the embodied woman who can never quite keep up. First of all, let's talk about how society broadly governs us to be perfect. Black Swan follows Nina, a perfection-driven ballerina whose fixation on her new rival Lily spirals into a psychological breakdown. Notably, Lily is intentionally meant to be a double of Nina, and the film is inspired by folklore surrounding doppelgangers. Now, Angela McRobbie frames contemporary femininity as governed by the perfect, and she describes perfection as a neoliberal horizon that drives self-surveillance and competitive self-management. Lily in Black Swan serves as that kind of benchmark. She's proof to Nina that the perfected self is always elsewhere, always ahead, slightly out of reach. Nina competes with Lily, her anticipated perfect self, who threatens to replace her and her role in Swan Lake. In The Substance, Elizabeth Sparkle, a fading celebrity, takes a black market drug that creates a younger, perfected version of herself, Sue, who threatens to erase Elizabeth entirely. Once again, Sue is a doppelganger, but this time she is drastically optimized. She is young, beautiful, energetic, and everything the industry wants a woman to be.
Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
We see how cultural regimes teach women to seek perpetual optimization. We then see how platforms intensify this horizon of perfection into a demand for constant visibility and performance. In an article about Fitspiration on social media, Camacho Mañano and Gray write, "It functions as a post-feminist biopedagogy which instructs and regulates young women's bodies and subjectivities." This lays the groundwork for understanding platforms almost like instructors. They teach women how to sculpt themselves into the right kind of body that is visible, disciplined, and optimized. And we see this kind of concept in Perfect Blue, which follows a pop idol, Mima, who quits her J-pop group in order to pursue an acting career. She becomes stalked by an obsessive fan, is pushed into increasingly graphic roles in her acting career, and is simultaneously haunted by the real Mima. She finds a website called Mima's Room, which consists of public diary entries presented as if it was written by her, recording her daily life and private thoughts in great detail. Mima's Room mirrors a platform. It collects, curates, and broadcasts an idealized version of Mima that others consume. And that idealized version is also what leads Mima to self-discipline her behavior. Fans treat it as the authoritative version of her, just like how audiences trust highly curated online personas over real people. In Cam, we once again see how, on platforms, identity becomes a public performance. Cam follows Alice, a cam girl who works under the name Lola_Lola. One day, she discovers that her account has been taken over by a digitally replicated version of herself, an exact copy that continues performing live, interacting with fans, and rising in popularity, while she is locked out of her account. The platform refuses to acknowledge the theft, and Alice loses control over both her income and her identity as the replica outperforms her on her own channel. The replica of Alice is a better, more compliant, more endlessly energetic version of her. It is one that never gets tired, never makes mistakes, and always delivers what viewers want. The platform rewards this optimized version with higher rankings and more visibility, shown by how the fake Lola is able to reach the #1 rank by the end of the film, which is something that Alice has always dreamed of. Like in Perfect Blue, the digital double becomes the standard that Alice is measured against, revealing how platforms enforce ideals of perfection that real women cannot match. But platforms don't just demand visibility, they commodify it. Chung-Fin Lin explains how in the platform economy, identity functions both as capital and as a consumer good, actively curated and performed to satisfy platform algorithms and audience expectations. Identity itself is commodified. The self becomes an asset to be optimized. In Cam, we can also interpret the double as a platform-owned commodity that belongs to the system. It doesn't matter that Alice is the real woman behind the camera. What the platform values is the persona that continues generating revenue. But fans don't notice the difference, and the platform refuses to intervene, because the branded figure of Lola is still producing engagement. Alice's identity becomes a kind of intellectual property, something that can be copied, circulated, and monetized without her involvement. In The Substance, Sue is instantly elevated to the role of TV host because her body is optimized for visibility. Her image fits perfectly into the media economy's demand for brightness, energy, and legibility. Her body is a monetizable asset. And these films visualize platform capitalism's fantasy, a woman who's infinitely reproducible, infinitely profitable, and infinitely optimized. A woman who no longer needs the woman who made her. Thus, the next step is inevitable. The self begins to split. The optimized, platform-ready version of a person begins to take on a life of its own, circulating independently of the embodied subject who once created it. This horror is what creates the doppelganger. Obviously, we see this in Perfect Blue, where Mima is haunted by not only the presence of a real Mima physically, but also the presence of Mima's room, which creates another persona of Mima that is built by audiences and fans rather than by Mima herself. It is a remnant of performance labor that continues to circulate independently of the performer. We see this in Cam, where the fake Lola continues to stream independently of Alice. And of course, we see it in The Substance, as the younger Sue is literally her own persona who starts to act independently and even tries to get rid of Elizabeth. Across all 5 films, the feminine doppelganger emerges as a perfected, optimized digital subject who threatens to eclipse the imperfect, embodied self. She exposes the pressures and contradictions of living under constant visibility, and reveals how easily women can be replaced by a version of themselves. So the question that these films leave us is simple. What would it mean to stop performing for the platform and to instead choose the unoptimized, imperfect version of herself?